Well, good morning, comment people. I'm back with my number five. This one is on Mr. Sallah, Halifa Sallah of DOI, president candidate for DOI. And I want to tell you exactly why I don't think Mr. Sallah would be a very good choice for president at this point compared to Mr. Dabo of the UDP. Uh, and to just start with, for those who are younger, and I'll tell you what I know about Mr. Sallah. Mr. Salah, before politics came, wasn't an unknown quantity in Gambian public life. When he came back from the States, he worked as a graduate of sociology. In sociology, he was employed at the Social Welfare Department, as a graduate officer. And Mr. Salah, uh, like a year later, I think was given a platform on Radio Gambia. He used to have a program on Radio Gambia every week. Uh, and in that in the time that he was on, he had that program. He was using satire. Satire, which, like I said, satire is a weapon in the hands of intelligent people or educated people to caricature their society. Like if you read Oscar Wilde and people like that, you get a point of what they're saying. Mark Twain, and, people, you use satire to make fun of society and the dumb things that people do, or talk about powerful people without them realizing that it's you that they're, that you're talking about. Because Halifa had his program on Radio Gambia. He had a character called Lolly. Lolly is like a maiden. It's a young, innocent girl, pretty. And there's Boy Bry. Boy Bry is the sleazy character, debonair, man about town, suave, smooth talking, sleazy character, official who was praying in Lolly, And so Lolly, Boy Bry taking kind of Lolly, and Halifa had this thing going on. And it was very enjoyable. It was just a joy to listen to. Halifa, that's his best talent really. It's not writing. Many people regard his writing is not all that. He makes a lot of mistakes. His writing style is kind of convoluted. It's not clear. It confuses. It's only Gambian things. He's a better spokesperson. He's a better orator than writer. His writing is very confusing. It's just confusing as hell. And this is why it's like you read it many times. You have to read him multiple times to try to see where he's going, and it's like there's very clumsy the way he writes. But it's an orator. He's a very good orator. He knows how to talk, how to deliver speech, and apparently he had a lot of practice. I didn't know this until I bumped into one of his classmates from high school. This guy was Halifa's classmate from Form 1 to Form 5, and and then he told me, he said, let me tell you, man. He said the only people who debate Halifa are people who don't know him. He said, let me tell you, he said, that guy from Form 1 to Form 5. He said, he dressed like an Aku, and he did like an Okuma. He would tie his belt in midriff, and he has his afro when he come to school. And he said, every single day during break time, lunchtime, Halifa would go around. He would he'd come up with a topic, and he'd find somebody to debate with. And he said every single member of the class debate, Halifa would get draft from the debates. And he said by the time they go to Form 3, everybody would say, well, Halifa going to you. And they all run. They say, oh, no, we don't want to. Because Halifa always has to win the debate. And so when he told me, I said, oh, okay, that figures. He said, none of us is surprised that he went to the party. He said, because from school, he said, that's how he was. He said, Halifa would always debate somebody. He said, that's, you can never win a debate with him. And so, that was a fly. And I was just cracking them. And, they came to America around the same time. This guy is now a retired professor at a very good school in this country. And he tried to retire 3 years ago, and the school still drag him back. They want him to, he basically now makes his own rules, makes his schedule, teach when he wants to teach, because the school needs him in the area that he teaches. And he is really in that thing. And we talk sometimes, and it's very remarkable what the things I learned from him. But coming back to Mr. Sallah, when Mr. Sallah came and he did that program on Radio Gambia, the Lolly thing, and while he was doing that on the ground, if you follow him, he's somebody with an active mind. And so he was writing his. He was left of the people. He didn't like the PPP government at all, and so he was writing pamphlets, about the tomorrow, Gambia's tomorrow, like the future of the Gambia. And the pamphlet they used to call the voice of the future. Halifa was the author. He was the author. Samsar was his partner, but Samsar then was teaching at Gambia High School, and then Halifa was doing his thing. And so anyway, it came to a point where, because they were writing these pamphlets, and it wasn't under any particular authorized publication, and of course they were using government station and things like that, and so that got them in trouble. When the PPP people went after them, though, foolishly they had really, they didn't have, the underground movement in those days were very tight knit. When you talk about Moja, when you talk about Vu, Kensington Vu, Ken Street Vu, so when you talk about the Pengu George group, all those, they link together, they know each other, very close knit thing. I know this because in early 80s, and that's how I met my father. I met him through the Moja groups. They were allied with the Halifa and the other underground movements, and so there was a sort of camaraderie, brother, like Omerta, it's like this one, Omerta, like the same way that you have cartels that work, and nobody says anything, you all band together, and that's how the PPP government's case crashed against Halifa and them and Mr. Sallah, because they had no witnesses, nobody would talk. People who knew what was going on. Everyone knew that Halifa was writing this thing. They all knew it. It was ruined, and it was a boy from Muslim high school. Then he went to Gambia High School, and he was one of the main people who were dropping these pamphlets at schools in Banjul, the voice of the future. So people go to school in the morning, and they find this subversive, propaganda in the school, talking about the corruption in the country and why the country needs to change and the future of the country and how the youth are going to take. It's things like that. And so when the PPP people, or when the PPP government arrested Mr. Sallah, then they had them, put in remand for 11 months, and eventually they had to let them go because the case crashed because nobody would talk. And Halifa to this day had never admitted to be the author of those reasons. And yet, if you ask anybody my age who was going to school in Banjul in the 80s, in the early 80s, and ask them about the voice of the future, and when you look at that and you look at Halifa's writing, boy, it's like me and my daughter. The DNA is right there. You just have to read it. You read just a paragraph and you read, okay, that's Halifa right there. We all have our signature, our DNA in our writing. If you're used to writing, you can tell who the author is after reading a few things from that person. And clearly that was Halifa's writing. And to just to buttress what I'm saying, if once the duo, the Mr. Sarah and Mr. Sarah were arrested and put in remand, the voice of the future just miraculously, it disappeared. Stopped appearing on campus. It ceased to exist. So the PPP government, I guess they accomplished what they were looking for. All right? That was in the early 80s. So you fast forward a few years. Middle of the decade, 85, late of 85, going to 86, the Doi people, Halifa's group, were ready to launch a political movement. This time, they are no longer a subversive movement. They are no longer unregistered. This time, they come out upfront, open. And before they launched Doi, Foria Doi and Foria officially, they had started with a series of symposia. Carnifing Hall, Plaza Cinema, different places. They will have public discussion, long monologues, they take turns and lecture the people about why the PP government is failing and why things need to change. 6 Junction, Charlestown, telling towards the Serekunda Cemetery. I watched them many times, Plaza Cinema, Carnifing Hall multiple times. And in those days, because I was one of those crazy kids that was really into the left wing mold, and so I followed those things back then. And so when I circle back again, when you talk about Mr. Halifa Sallah, a few things stand up about Halifa, and at this point, because his man has been in our public life for 35 years. If you at this point don't understand Halifa, you don't know Halifa, it's either because you're really terrible at observing, or you're really just lazy. Because at this point, the man is an open book. There are many things about him that are incredibly positive, very, very positive. And I'll tell you a few of these, the main ones. One, Khalifa is intellectually curious. Khalifa, more than any other politician, with the exception, like I said, with the exception of Bibi Dawo, he's very well read. He's very intellectually curious, very, really intellectually curious. And Khalifa has discipline. He has real personal discipline. Like I said, the twin problems of Africa is about leaders stealing the people's money to support their personal lifestyles, extravagant lifestyles, fancy houses, expensive cars, jewelry for their wives, jewelry for their girlfriends. Because those things, maintaining girlfriends, multiple girlfriends, especially women who are much younger than you, it's not a cheap thing. And in Africa, this is so pervasive in our public life that our leaders who are like that, who support that kind of lifestyle, who want that kind of lifestyle, want to live that kind of lifestyle, having multiple women, concubines, girlfriend, whatever you want to call them, on the side, and then loving money to live, opulent lifestyles. Those are all big red flags. And thank God with Halifa has none of those issues. So if all we're looking for is somebody who will never steal our money to give to his concubines or girlfriends, or to live an expensive lifestyle at the expense of the people, Khalifa is our candidate, no doubt about it. He will be the best person for that job because he beats every other candidate in that. Not just candidate, politician, period. He doesn't care about any of these fancy things, fancy clothes, fancy shoes, fancy, expensive houses. That's not Khalifa. And he's not into this womanizing girlfriend in every, town or village in the country. He's not that type. He's incredibly disciplined human being. That's his strength. That's his positive. So I go to the negatives and the things that really makes me really pull back because I know this thing about him. And then I say, naturally, I have an affinity. I get attracted. That attracts me. I know his lifestyle, and I have a lot of respect for that. But the one thing that bothers me about Khalifa is one. Khalifa is very egotistical. I will repeat this. Khalifa has a serious problem putting his ego in check. What am I talking about? Let's go back to the 80s. Khalifa would say things publicly that would turn out to be wrong, and he will refuse to disown it. He seems incapable of saying, I screwed up, I made a mistake, I didn't see this coming. Sorry. Everyone, it doesn't matter how smart you are, it doesn't matter how educated you are, you have to understand that when you make a mistake, the right thing to do is to publicly disown it, own up to your mistake, and move on. You're not a perfect person. Khalifa has a problem with this, and we've seen that over and over and over. He will make a mistake instead of owning up to it, he will just dig in and try to argue. It's like his classmate told me, just like high school. It's not high school. This is a very serious thing. It's very serious. When we're dealing with a country, these things have implications. These are just dangerous. It's not a good thing to do those kind of things. That's the first thing. The second big draw, the second thing that really bothers me too about Mr. Saleh is the fact that he doesn't seem to respect other professional people in their areas. We see him always leaving his lane and going to other people's lane. You're supposed to drive going towards Bicao. There's a car on your right, and there's a car on your left. You keep leaving your lane and you get into other people's lane. If an accident happens, you're the cause of the accident. You can't blame other people for something that you've done. You are a sociologist, you know social science. Mr. X is a finance person, he understands finance. He's an accountant, he understands finance. It will not kill you to respect him. Show him respect. That's to say, like we had a columnist in this Washington area, William Raspberry. He's passed on now, I think, in the last 15, 16 years. Really bright old man. And one of the things he used to say was, he said, people don't understand, people underestimate professions. He said the average professional spends about a minimum of 4 years studying something. If you go to business school and you want to be a Mexican, marketing professional, you will spend 4 years studying things related to marketing for 4 years. If you want to be a medical doctor, in this country, you'll be there a minimum of 7 years studying medicine. You want to be an accountant, then you have to, be there 4 years, and then you have to go an extra, in Virginia, you have to go an extra 2 years to get a master's degree, and before they will allow you to get the professional credentials for your field. So what Mr. Raspberry used to say, old Raspberry, may God bless his soul, what he used to say was, he said the average person doesn't take more than 2 years to call their wife. He said, you want the woman, you like the woman. He said, when you start going out with her, dating her, going up and down, he said, within 2 years, you make up your mind. You say, okay, I can spend the rest of my life with this person. Only 2 years. And he said, so in effect, we make the decision that would last for a lifetime. It only takes us 2 years to get to that conclusion, to learn everything we need to know about that thing. And he said, but these professions that we learn, it takes us much longer time. So when somebody comes and, you see somebody who's like a nurse, who's been to nursing school for 4 years, when they tell you something about nursing, pull back. You can read all you want about nursing. That wouldn't make you like him or her. That's what they studied. So you need to respect that. Halifa, we see this over and over and over. He doesn't seem to understand that or accept that. He pretended lawyer. He keeps playing lawyer. He keeps playing finance guy. And in all of this have consequences because we've seen the mistakes that he's made publicly over a long period of time. Why? And just to understand to drive home what I'm trying to say, we can look at an entire country, the island of Cuba, La Isla de Cuba, okay? Dr. Alejandro Fidel Ruiz Castro, Dr. Castro, Fidel Castro, some people call dictator, tyrant, all that crazy that I hear. I don't believe it. But the one thing that Castro did wrong was this attitude of trying to do everything, to try to be everything. Castro is an extraordinarily brilliant human being. He had professional training. And not only that, he never went to any military school, but he was a military genius. What Castro did, and for those who are young, you can find out what Castro did in Angola in 1986, the Battle of Quito Valley. If you understand what Castro did in Quito Valley in 1986, you will understand what I'm talking about. It is the first time in human history, in modern human history, that a small, tiny island nation did what the United States couldn't do in Afghanistan, what the Russians couldn't do in Afghanistan, and what the French couldn't do in Vietnam. This tiny little country in the middle of the Pacific, literally in the middle of Atlantic, literally just 90 miles of Florida, they did. Castro did that. And Castro didn't just sit in Havana and tell his commander to do it. No, Castro flew to Angola and he led his troops. And they beat the apartheid forces in 1986. They beat them like a drum, humiliated them in ways that has never been seen. And that, my friend, was the catalyst for what happened the very next year. You see, in 1985, P.W. Botha, who was the racist leader of South Africa, gave a speech in August of 1985 when we were, doing the GCE exams, and he said, studying for the GCE exam, right? And he said, apartheid today, apartheid tomorrow, apartheid forever. And the speech he called crossing the Rubicon. We have crossed the Rubicon in South Africa. And if you're young, go and Google this speech and read it. Very racist, very hard line. He said they're not going anywhere. They're not going. And his foreign minister, Pig Border, actually said in London that same year that they would rather burn the whole of South Africa than give it back to the black people, to blacks. That was in 1985. When Peter Castro was done with them the next year, they started singing a completely different tone. Completely different tone. Students of African history know this. Most people generally don't know. They assume that it was now Fidel Castro singularly handed over that country because of what he did in Angola. He put common sense in the heads of the Afrikaners in South Africa that your rule has to come to an end. It's unsustainable because before then, the apartheid government said they're waiting for the whole of Africa and they're going to beat Africa in any war that African people start. Fidel Castro made them realize that is nonsense. That is not true. And Africa, United Africa can beat them. And he did that singularly. And so that's it. But again, coming back to what, of course, I'm digressing. Coming back to what I'm saying, however bright the person is, you have limitations, and you need to know your limitations. Halifa seems to have a problem with it. That's the second point. The third point is Halifa has been very inconsistent. When I hear people talk about how consistent he is, and I laugh. I say, "Oh my goodness, lazy Gambian people." We are one sort of, and I tell a friend of mine this, and he doesn't like it when I tell him. But I said, the average Gambian pie, the so-called educated Gambian, I'm not talking about illiterate Gambians, so-called educated Gambian people. If you write a very long description of the person, describe everything, how they look, their height, their shape, their nose, everything you describe in details about the person, and then you write that a whole page, and in the next page you just start saying, the bearer of the bearer of this note is a bumbling fool who doesn't love to live. You can take this letter from him and lead him to the gallows and execute him. The average Gambian, because it's 200 words, if it is 200-word document, the average Gambian will take that thing and hand it over to their execution without reading it, because so damn lazy. We are so late. And so a lot of people who jump up and down, especially the DOIS supporters, clearly either don't read what Halifa writes or don't understand what he writes. Because if you follow closely what Halifa says, you follow him, you follow his style, you study him, you see a lot of inconsistencies. And I'll go back to the very beginning, circle back again, just to make the point. We go to 1987, the first time 2 years at 1985, when they started the symposium, end of 1985, going to 1986. Like I said, they started on the Senegambia Confederation. At what point, because Senegambia Confederation was ratified in 1982 by the first directly elected parliament. So 1982 was the first year that Jawara actually stood for the first direct election as president. Before then, Jawara was, we had the British parliamentary system where Jawara was elected president only because PPP had more MPs in the parliament. In 1982, after the Kuki crisis, Jawara said we should get a direct franchise whereby Jawara will stand as a candidate for the PPP and people will vote for him directly, not through the MPs. And so when that happened, they ratified the Senegambia Confederation. When DOI came in 3 years later, the main topic of their symposium, for the first 2 years, was about the Senegambia Confederation and how ridiculous it was. And what they used to do was they would go down the list of all the PPP candidates that voted for the ratification of the Confederation, and they made fun of them. They were hilarious. Back then, I hated the PPP, and then so I was one of the people, young youngsters, that used to cheer them on. And there's a day that at Plaza Cinema in Serekunda, I will never forget. I was actually with Yoro Yalo, who was a co-founder of the independent newspaper in Pahali Crooks, and I swear to God, DOI folks had had called a symposium at the Plaza Cinema. Plaza Cinema used to be called Roxy Cinema in the 70s, and then they called it changed hands. I think some Indian guy owned it and they sold it, so it became Plaza. Roxy used to be Roxy, and then Roxy became Plaza. Well, we were there. This was in the afternoon. 2:15 was when it's scheduled. And we, like I used to tell my thing, I was dumb. I was young and dumb. I thought I knew everything. I didn't know a damn thing. Okay, I was in sixth form at the time, and we went to this DOI symposium. It was literally over 100 degrees. Very, very hot day. Mr. Sallah, Pasamu, Amisilla were on the stage. It was hot as hell. This guy, there's no cover. They were standing right where these large screen is. They had set up their microphones and everything there. And these guys were literally standing in the sun. And because they were doing that, because we are so stupid and young and stupid and dumb, crazy, we said, okay, because they're standing there in the sun, we would do this. We'll just sit there and listen to them. Sit on the sun instead of them. I think we did that for 30 minutes, and then we looked at it and we were like, okay, let's go, let's take a break. And we had to get out of there. When I think back to that now, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's the things we do when we're young. The things we do when you're young. And so, it's when I think about those, I was like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. But anyhow, that was how it was. That's how it was. And so here we are. Okay. And so that was Senegal, that was the DOI then. They were real opposition people, against the PP people. And so 1985, after those series of symposia, when they formally launched in 1986, and they started, that continued until 1987 when they contested the first election in May of 1987. And in that election, Mr. Jara was the candidate for DOI, and he lost very badly to his two opponents, Sirif Deba and Diki Jawara, and it was terrible. But something curious happened. You see, on the next day after the election, when the results came out, Cyril Deba came out as usual. Everybody said the election is not fair. It's not a real. It's not a fair contest because Jawara had a big advantage of the state. He used state resources, cars, and action and everything, and coverage on Radio Gambia. Literally, they allowed them only 1 hour of campaign time just before the election. And it wasn't fair. And it was none other than Mr. Sallah, who came out the next day and really trashed Mr. Deba. Said, no, the elections results are a true reflection of the wish of the Gambian people. And that same scenario came back in 1982. It repeated again in 1992, sorry. Okay? So 1987, Deba said the election was not fair because Jawara had a big advantage over them, and he was monopolizing the media. GIG, Gambia Radio at the time. Mr. Sallah said, no, that's nonsense. 1992, same thing. 2 years later, 1994, after the Jawara government was kicked out, a Scandinavian news crew went to Gambia in the summer of 1994, just a few weeks after the coup d'etat. And two of the people they interviewed, the things there, Ibrahim Sise with the Observer and all those people and that tape. If you listen to Ibrahim Sise, he was in his 20s. What he was saying made a lot more sense, a lot more insightful than what Halifa and Sida were saying. What struck me about Halifa's thing was what Halifa told that news crew in the summer of 1994 was really just a paraphrasing of what Deba was saying back in 1987 and 1992. So I'm looking here, I'm listening to this film. I played that the first time I see it, I was shocked. I played it 3 times to understand what I'm hearing. I'm like, how is this possible? So Deba was taking nonsense in 1987 when he said the Jawara's election results were unfair because of the advantages the man had. 1992, he was saying nonsense. According to who? Not Deba, according to Halifa Sallah. Yet 1994, Halifa Sallah was saying the same thing that Sidi Deba was saying, that he trusted Sidi Deba on 2 occasions for. And I'm like, who is this person then? What happened? What happened? Okay? And of course that goes on, and then, we know now, I know a lot more things because I was talking to OJ, and I'll say this on record. Uh, I was talking to Boye. This is it's almost 20 years now, and he told me, and he said, and this is after I was one of the people who had that debate with Mr. Sallah on Gambia, and trying to find out what in the world is going on behind the scenes, because nothing he said would make sense to me. And he had a lot of rationalizations. He would never attack Yajame for some reason. He was refusing to do that. And I was trying to find out what's going on. And then I was talking to Oya, and Oya said, I don't know what's going on, but let me tell you. I was in my house in Serekona one day, and then he said, this young lady, and he told me the name of the lady, that I will not say her name, but this woman was the secretary of Sadi Buhaira. Sadi Buhaira, who was killed by Yajame's people at Mile 2, Sana Sabali's friend. And he said, I was sitting at my home one day, and this lady came and said, Uncle Oji, come on, then. Said, how will you hear it? How will you hear? Why? Look, boy, is he deaf? Halifa Hamna Sidara. Because Halifa, the fine news in your office, Mutejo Sayebo for hours. They can discuss how much why they are always you discuss all the time. So this one basically is telling Oye that Halifa was going to the Assembly office, she was the secretary of Sadibu. And Sadibu will ask her to cancel all his appointments that day. And Sadibu in the office with Halifa for hours. I think at the time, I thought my guess is they were discussing the proposed constitution, which is the 1997 constitution. Okay? That's why Halifa has such a personal attachment to that constitution, because he advised the junta on that constitution. And so we don't have to speculate here, because Halifa went around the Gambia, coordinating campaign for the constitution, urging Gambians to vote for that 1997 constitution. And it turns out very clearly that Halifa didn't know what was in the final version of that document. And this to me is disturbing in many ways. One, Halifa is supposed to be an intellectual. Yet he was going around the Gambia campaigning for a document that he doesn't even know what is in it. Because the version that Halifa said, he was telling people that was there, that version had term limits. That version had entrenched clauses that basically guaranteed the independence for the Gambia's core institutions. The final version doesn't have any of those things. It doesn't. That's why it allowed the AI easily to come and get rid of the ones he doesn't like, easily. There was no entrenched version there. And so when I think about it, I say, okay, what you claim to be an intellectual law, if you can allow these high school boys to play you as a ping pong. You go around the country, tell people that vote for this constitution, because it will guarantee you freedom and it will open up democratic space. When these boys are pulling a full year on you, and you don't even seem to be the wiser. Why? It would be unfair to blame Mr. Sallah for Yajame's trickery. Yajame is an expert subterfuge. Every single guy that associated with him in the army, that helped him in the army, Yami turned against, one way or the other, betrayed in one way or the other. Sana Sabale, it was Sade, all these people. Bashiru Baron, all the people. He betrayed them. So to blame Mr. Sallah for Jammeh's crookery would be wrong. But what is fair is to question why he thought it was a good idea to help cover up for Jammeh's mess. Which takes me back to the Koro Sise incident in 1995. Koro died, and when he died, I was in Gambia, I was here, but it was killed, he was murdered in cold blood. We know that now for a fact. And we also know for a fact that people suspected that there was foul play there. And not only the ordinary people suspected, but the CID officer, Mr. Mbai, that Pambai who investigated it, said flat out there was foul play. In Inspector Boja, who is now chief of Combo North, the man who conquered he was at Bakau police station, who conquered the Ajame when Jajame was in Zana. Both Bojang and Bai said clearly this was foul play. This was foul play. They said it plainly. And Sirif Bojang, who was working for the Observer, wrote a very professional article to point out, to expose the fact that this is foul play. That what happened there was a cover-up going on. Now you contrast what they wrote against what Halifa and his people in Foria wrote. They essentially said that they have looked at this thing, they have investigated, they have showed them that Korosisa died in an accident. It defies common sense. Korosisa is the family from Georgetown. The man, he grew up in Sarakuna. What was he doing in Jambu at night? A place that he doesn't know anybody. That's rural Congo. This is in 1995. How was he somehow lured to that location? What was he finding in that place? Was he lured by somebody? Did he go there of his own volition? It never made any sense. And this, of course, is something that now we can all understand, that there was a lot more to that story than we knew at the time. But in any case, it suggests a cover-up that Doi clearly should never have been part of. And again, coming back to the refusal to own up to his mistakes, even when the facts are very clear that in fact the Doi version of the events there was not right, Halifa refused to own up to that. He still sticks with the version that they published, which we know now is really inaccurate. Okay, that's one. That's another point. And then the final point that really turns me off, and some other people, is this issue really of bullying. Mr. Sallah engages in bullying. Not only opponents, but he engages in bullying his colleagues and some of his key supporters. We have seen this in the public sphere. We don't need to speculate about this. In 2014, when our heroes went to try to remove Jammeh by force, Halifa basically said the same thing that Ibu Jara was saying. And very soon after all, he started referring to those of us who had a radical view that this man needs to be removed, Jammeh needs to be removed by all means necessary, as members of the far right. Now, the far right is not an endearing term. It's not a compliment to anybody. Because the far right in the West, anywhere you find people members of the far right, they are members of the lunatic fringe of the racist movements in the West. So it's people who really are not, they are really prone to violence, unnecessary violence, against people, often out of racial pride or prejudice. And it's like, what is far right about people demanding an end to the madness that we had going on? People have been killed, people have been raped, people have been disappeared, people have been exiled, people have been refused burial in Gambia. There's not more patriotic than people stand saying this needs to end. If the government is attempting to remove that and they fail, remember the far right? What's far right about that? That's one. The second point we saw again against one of his colleagues, long-time colleagues, Mr. Jara. Because a year later, in 2015, if I'm right, 2015, Mr. Sallah came out to tell us openly that Mr. Jara was not authorized to speak for Doi. This after Mr. Jara had made a statement to a reporter, and that was reported in the newspaper. And Mr. Sallah, very angrily, said Mr. Jara was not authorized to speak. Mr. Sallah is supposed to be a member of the DOIS Central Committee, Executive Committee, the Central Committee of DOIS. Mr. Jara is supposed to be a member of the same body. If Mr. Sallah can speak anytime he wants on any topic for DOIS, what special right does this Jara need to do the same thing? But more importantly, why does Jara need permission from Mr. Sallah to speak for DOIS? And if that's not disturbing enough, answer yourself. Just ask yourself a simple question. If Mr. Salah did not like what Mr. Jada said, they're all members of the Central Committee, they're all members of the same party, they're supposed to be in the same team. Why did he not tell this man, Jada, what his displeasure is with that statement privately? Why does he have to come in public to say that? Do we need to know that? Do people disagree about it? No. Let them talk about different things. Whatever he had to say about that statement, he could have kept it quiet. He could have done it on in the shadows, behind the scenes in the Central Committee. Why does he have to tell the government public that kind of thing publicly? Why? It's wrong. It shouldn't have happened. It's just flat out wrong. And so when I look at those things and I'm like, whoa, that's not right. It's the same year he said Pastor Majaw, who's one of his diaspora big fans, took a position on an issue, and he Salah flat out told someone, which was reported back then, that basically took in a nutshell that Mr. Pastor better fall in line or else. Don't take my word for any of this. You can go find out yourself. If you actually do fan, go and find out yourself. Am I making this things up? No. It's one thing after another after another. This is not right. And what bothers me is, if you are the leader of a party that still cannot get 5% of the vote in Gambia, and this is how you behave, this is how you treat the people around you, this bullying thing, what would you do to the rest of us who will always disagree with you if you do the wrong thing? Someone will never shy away from saying things that are supposedly controversial. It doesn't matter who's president. It doesn't matter. I'm endorsing Mr. Dawo. If he becomes president tomorrow and he start doing dumb things, I'll be the first. I'll have a fight with him. And Mr. Dawo, he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to look for. The daughter knows me. Ayama knows me very well. The brothers, Momo Dawo and Yaya Dawo, they all know me very well. I will never shy away from saying what I believe. So what bothers me, and I think about this thing, and then the last one, which is very open, which is very clear, is the issue of the reporters in Doi 6 years ago, who complained back in 2015, I think, or 16, about their not being paid on time. Pandemic had the stories on this thing, and the reporters talked, and somebody leaked the transcript of what Halifa told. He told them angrily that if he dies, he doesn't even want them to. If he dies, that's why he doesn't even want them to be at his funeral, because they don't believe in what he believes in. I got 3 kids. They're all in the teens. My youngest are all in the teens, and the older one is in college. But I don't. If my kids can be, they can pretty much believe anything they want to believe. I tell them to follow the facts. They don't have to agree with me to get my love, to my respect. I want them to be independent thinkers, think for themselves, not wait for daddy to think for them. What benefit is that to them? The world is complicated. The world is changing in ways that I cannot even understand. I try to keep up, but I'm still slow. I know for a fact. The kids are smarter than me. Why the hell would I want my kids to agree with me on everything? That's insane. And so when I think about all those factors, there's this bullying, this refusal to acknowledge your mistakes, these pretexts that you understand areas that you don't understand, to know things that you know or don't know. When I look at all those things, I'm like, okay, Mr. Saleh is a very nice man. He's a very good person. He has very incredible strength, very decent human being, but he would not make a good leader. He would not make a good leader. I know this is painful for some people to hear, but this is my honest assessment. And I'll leave it with you guys. Those that don't like it, please go and fact check this, what I'm saying, and come back and tell me. Please, you know where to find me. So I thank you all, and then I'll come back and lay out the case for Mr. Hussein Odawa and why he would be a better candidate than all these guys, all these 5 other candidates running for office. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.